Hello, so this is my presentation for the language and dialect module. So the three main points I'm going to be talking about are the misconceptions around the Latinx community, personal identification, and ways we can improve those misconceptions and stereotypes of this community, specifically in schools. So the overall point from the readings and videos available to me for this module was that there is a deficit perspective for the Latinx community, unfortunately. And before 1960s, there has been a long history of determining Latinx students not bilingual, but semilingual. And this is because many students were not fully proficient in either Spanish or English, so they weren't even considered bilingual. They were just considered semilingual. And after 1960s, when this idea started to change a little bit, it still didn't for the Latinx community, unfortunately. And this quote explains that. It's that researchers instead concluded that while the bilingualism of white middle class and upper class children led to cognitive advantages, the bilingualism of Latinx children was still deficit, as determined by language assessments in both English and Spanish. Which is really sad to read, that while for other people, it was very clear that there was benefits to bilingualism, but not for Latinx children. And it's cognitively beneficial to be bilingual, but not if you're Latinx. Then it's considered a deficit. Personal identification. So like Lippy Green talked about in this chapter, there is a lot of self-identification that has ties with language. So all of the Latinx communities most likely experience discrimination. There are settlement patterns, and they experience learning the quote-unquote wrong language. However, all of these factors unite these people and play a large role in their self-identification. So the discrimination that they face, although it is negative, it ultimately plays a role in their self-identification. Same with settlement patterns. When they move to America from their home countries, they tend to settle in the same areas as people from their home countries to continue some aspects from their home country. And also learning the wrong English. There was a quote in the Lippy Green book saying that learning the English language, the words, is the easy part, but learning the accent is the hard part that most people will never be able to experience. And therefore it's seen as they still don't know English, they don't know the right English. So that is something that also helps create their personal identity. And this pink box over here, this shows the self-identity for the primary language that the Latinx people use in America. So for example, if they are Spanish dominant, if they tend to speak Spanish more, if they are more proficient in Spanish, they are most likely to self-identify with their home country of origin. So if you ask them where they're from, they will say Mexican or Peruvian. If they are bilingual, if they have around the same proficiency as English and Spanish, they are most likely to self-identify with their country of origin, or by saying Latino, Latina, or Hispanic. And if they mostly speak English, or they are more proficient in English, they will most likely self-identify with America as their home origin. And that is most likely due to societal pressures. And at the bottom, I thought that was very interesting. It says Hispanic was created by the government and entails everyone of Spanish-speaking national or ethnic origins. However, this term avoids personal indigenous cultures and connects people ultimately to Spain. So the term Hispanic really takes away the personal identification of the Latinx people's home countries. And these are just three of many examples from the Lippy Green chapter on discrimination. So the first one is discrimination in education. And the example is a professor in college refused to believe that I written an essay because he assumed Mexicans don't write very well, and so therefore I couldn't have written this paper. Also in the judicial system, in hearing a criminal case On conspiracy to commit robbery, a judge offered 4 Spanish-speaking defendants a choice: learn English or go to jail for 2 years. Also, in the community, a 58-year-old Latino speaking on his cell phone in Spanish was punched in the face by a 28-year-old Anglo male who shouted, "Speak English." These are just few of the many examples on that page in the Libby Green Book that were very heartbreaking to read. One way that we can make a change on these misconceptions and stereotypes is to increase teacher diversity in schools. So a quarter of all public schools in the United States are made up of Latinx students. However, less than 85% of teachers identify as Latinx. And however, there is no data specifically on Latinx students having Latinx teachers, there is for African American students, and the results of that is that they are less likely to drop out of school, they're held to higher expectations, and themselves and the rest of the class and the school have more exposure to diversity. Another positive to increasing teacher diversity is that many Latinx students have parents, at least one, living in another country, and they face societal struggles, and those are both things that a Latinx teacher can most likely relate to and connect to students, which ultimately helps them more. It's much easier for a student to come to you if you have firsthand experience with that problem. Also, many Latinx teachers were ELLs themselves. And seeing Latinx teachers graduate college and be successful pushes students to follow in their footsteps. And Latinx teachers are more willing to share their ethnic backgrounds with students. So all of these things really show the benefits for increasing teacher diversity to help change the misconceptions around the Latinx community. And here are my references. Thanks for listening.